the 22nd of June, 1940, Compiègne, France. After almost 70 years, the Third French Republic collapses under military defeat, and a new regime is born after the country signs an armistice with Nazi Germany. The new Vichy government pledges neutrality, but soon becomes a willing collaborator, enforcing anti-Jewish laws, suppressing resistance, and sending French workers to Nazi factories. At the heart of the collaboration with Nazi Germany is a man who willingly prepared lists of French citizens to be executed by the Nazis. His name is Pierre Pucheu. Pierre Firmin Pucheu was born on the 27th of June 1899 in the modest French town of Beaumont-sur-Oise, located north of Paris. His father kept a small tailor's shop and expected his son to follow a safe profession, but the boy's quick intelligence earned him a scholarship at the famous École Normale Supérieure in Paris. In 1924, Pucheu married Jacqueline Santenoy, the daughter of the renowned Brussels architect Paul Santenoy. The marriage produced 4 children, and the young family decided to live in the French capital. Paris in the 1920s was still bright with the promise of post-war rebuilding, and although Pucheu studied beside future writers such as Robert Brasillac and Jean-Paul Sartre, he soon decided that the power of ideas lay not only in books. The clang of new machinery, the hum of the stock exchange, and the hope that industry could raise nations from ruin captured his imagination. After graduation, he turned to the steel trade, joined a firm that bought ore from Lorraine and coal from the Ruhr, and in surprisingly few years became the managing force of the Cartel d'Acier, one of the largest steel monopolies in France. His network stretched eastward through Europe to the Czechoslovak company Škoda, whose workshops impressed him as a model of disciplined modernity. By his 30s, he had acquired wealth, a reputation for exact bookkeeping, and a conviction that scientific management, if placed above party wrangling, could push society forward more surely than the nice speeches of many politicians. Money and influence drew Pucheu toward politics at the precise moment when French politics began to crack. The Great Depression hit French factories late but hard. While strikes shook the ports and mines, the street riots of the 6th of February 1934, in which far-right leagues clashed with police outside the French National Assembly, convinced many employers that the French Third Republic could no longer maintain public order. Pucheu first backed the organization named Cross of Fire, which was a veterans league preaching patriotic welfare and anti-communism, which later took direction towards fascist ideology. Soon afterwards, he switched to Jacques Doriot's French Popular Party, which promised firm resistance to communism. The French Popular Party was openly anti-Semitic and fascist. The party was important for Pucheu, or he was important to the party. At the end, it was thanks to his money and several other industrialists, which kept the party presses rolling with their propaganda. Because of that, Pucheu was far more shocked when in 1938 he discovered that Doriot and his party took money from Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. This discovery happened only weeks after the Munich Agreement sacrificed the Sudeten frontier of Czechoslovakia, a blow that threatened both French honor and future contracts with Škoda factories. Disgusted, Pucheu withdrew his subsidies and with them a large slice of the party's income. He still feared a communist revolution, but now distrusted German ambitions as well. He probably saw the Munich Agreement as a concession to the pressure of Nazi Germany and a confirmation of the weakness of the French Republic and democracy. His fears came true after the outbreak of the Second World War on the 1st of September 1939. Despite declaring war on Nazi Germany, France was unable to come to the aid of its Polish ally and concentrated mainly on preparing for a defensive war on its own territory. These tactics turned to catastrophe in the spring of 1940. German armor columns sliced through the Ardennes, trapped the main French forces, and shattered the remnants on the Allied forces. Paris fell on the 14th of June 1940, and French representatives asked the Germans for armistice terms. In view of Pucheu and other far-right industrialists and politicians, the defeat was a result of democracy, as well as the incompetence of politicians. On the 22nd of June 1940, a train carriage in Compiègne witnessed once again the signing of an armistice between France and Germany. This time it was France which was surrendering to Germany, and it took place on the same spot and in the same train carriage as in 1918. Britain was suddenly alone, and Hitler's map now showed a dark belt of occupied territory stretching from the Arctic Circle to the Pyrenees, interrupted only by the pale patch of unoccupied southeastern France that the armistice left to the French administration, at least on paper. That pale patch soon became Vichy France, named for the spa town where the government installed itself. On the 10th of July 1940, the French National Assembly gave Marshal Pétain full powers to write a new constitution. In practice, no constitution ever appeared. Instead, decrees flowed from the old marshal and his ministers. The Republican motto, "Liberty, Equality, Fraternity," was scrubbed from public buildings and replaced by "Work, Family, Fatherland." Civil servants removed busts of Marianne, the symbol of the Republic, and hung the Marshal's portrait in their offices. Pétain soon began blaming the Third Republic's democracy and endemic corruption for France's humiliating defeat by Germany. Accordingly, his government soon began taking on authoritarian characteristics. Democratic liberties and guarantees were immediately suspended. The crime of opinion was established, effectively repealing freedom of thought and expression, and critics were frequently arrested. Collaboration took varying shapes. Economists bargained over wheat deliveries to the Reich, police prefects hunted refugees and resistance fighters, and lawyers drafted laws that excluded Jews from public life. Beneath the wrangling of personalities, however, a younger technocratic layer kept the bureaucratic machine oiled, believing that modern experts could guide France through occupation to eventual renewal. Pucheu, with his record in heavy industry, fitted this role perfectly. In early 1941, industrialist friends who controlled the influential daily newspaper Le Temps promoted Pucheu as the man to boost national output under difficult conditions. He duly became Minister of Industrial Production and, a few months later, Minister of Interior. At the time of Vichy France, this was a very powerful position, which, however, was also a symbol of collaboration with Nazi Germany. In this role, Pucheu revealed his darker and far more sinister side, and according to some sources, Pucheu said he was ready to execute 20,000 communists. In his office, he worked toward these promises. When resistance fighters shot German officers in Nantes and Bordeaux in October 1941, the Germans demanded bloody reprisals, and Pucheu personally compiled the lists of 98 men in all who were shot in groups. More than half of the group were Jews picked from the French-run concentration camp at Drancy. Pucheu also confirmed his anti-Semitic views in creating specific units to deal with Jewish affairs. However, he did not stop there, and also created an anti-communist unit as well as a special bureau to track Freemasons. To colleagues inside the Vichy government, such as Justice Minister Joseph Barthélemy, he appeared a confirmed Nazi. Pucheu truly admired the economic organization of the Reich and believed in a Europe led by Nazi Germany, but he wanted France, through efficient industry, to rank as the first of that Europe's secondary powers, not a mere satellite of Nazi Germany. It was in this spirit that he was dealing with the Germans. By April 1942, irritated German envoys persuaded Pétain to dismiss him, arguing that other collaborators showed less pride and more obedience. During the time when Vichy ministers were collaborating with Nazi Germany, a different France emerged in forests, barns, and safe flats. Young men who refused to labor in German factories fled to the hills. Retired officers formed sabotage groups. Couriers biked across night roads with counterfeit papers. And London BBC broadcasts were sending coded instructions to fighters on French soil. The French resistance never became a single army, but its many branches grew bolder, blowing up rail lines, collecting intelligence, and assassinating collaborators with Nazi Germany. Ordinary villagers, school teachers, and factory workers risked arrest to hide parachuted weapons or ration cards. Each attack on German troops triggered reprisals, yet the cycle of terror also exposed the moral void of collaborators who hunted their own countrymen for a foreign master. And one of those men who was helping the occupants was Pierre Pucheu. The balance tilted in the autumn of 1942. On the 8th of November, British and United States forces landed along the coasts of Morocco and Algeria, which were at that time part of Vichy territory. The news stunned Pétain's government, and a few days later German tanks rolled over the demarcation line in France and occupied the entire Vichy territory. The Germans took precautions in the event that the Vichy regime would try to change sides and join the Allies. Pucheu, already pushed aside politically, withdrew to Franco's Spain, where many right-wing refugees found uneasy shelter. There, General Henri Giraud, who commanded French forces in North Africa under Allied protection, invited him to Casablanca, promising safe conduct and implying that seasoned administrators might still be needed, despite their previous collaboration with Nazi Germany. Perhaps Pucheu dreamed of rehabilitation. Perhaps his sense of military duty as a reserve officer told him to present himself, now that the French units had re-entered the fight against the occupants. In May 1943, he crossed into Morocco. By then, however, the political wind had changed. Charles de Gaulle, the leader of the Free French, had arrived in Algiers, the capital city of Algeria, and merged his movement with Giraud's staff, becoming the dominant voice. The future French President de Gaulle viewed high Vichy ministers as traitors, whose punishment would discourage any lingering collaboration at home. The safe conduct was ignored. Pucheu was arrested, transferred to Algiers in October 1943, and charged for treason. He was the first person tried under the French Committee of the National Liberation's September 1943 edict, charging all Vichy ministers with treason. The trial opened in March 1944, 3 months before the Normandy landings. The charges spoke of illegal arrests, complicity in enemy reprisals, and service to the foe. Pucheu defended himself and admitted to selection of the hostages, but argued that without precise lists the Germans would have executed even more people at random. The verdict was death by firing squad. Even though General Giraud asked for clemency, pointing to his earlier promise of safe conduct, General de Gaulle, though later admitting personal regret, let the sentence stand. At dawn on the 20th of March 1944, the 44-year-old Pierre Pucheu shook hands with members of the firing squad, declined a blindfold, and gave them order to fire. Witnesses noted that he fell without a cry. He was the first senior collaborator executed under Free French jurisdiction, and his death warned any waverers in occupied France that the coming liberation would bring stern reckoning. Pucheu's fear of communism, disgust with parliamentary squabbling, and the apparent success of the Nazi economy nudged him step by step toward choices that, in a different decade, he might himself have judged monstrous. When defeat struck in 1940, he served a collaborationist government that called itself patriotic, even as it deported fellow citizens. In office, he helped orchestrate murder in the false hope of limiting greater deaths, yet the calculation itself dissolved any moral boundary. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.